Hey everybody, Objectively Dan here. Lots of people believe different things, and that's why we're here every single Friday. So if you believe in alternative facts or conspiracies or what other people would call pseudoscience, or even just your religious beliefs, we want to know why. So call into the show because the show is starting right now. Hey folks, Objectively Dan here, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Wanted. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. So if you'd like to call us, you can do that right now. The lines are open. It is 512-991-9242 to call in, or you can call through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. And as always, Truth Wanted is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And every single week, I always have a special guest with me. This week is no different. It's Justin Frechette. Frechette.
It was really nice. The very first time you did it, that was perfect.
I tried my best here. Justin, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dan. You are objectively the best Dan I know.
Wow.
There you go.
Yes, I did it. That's the goal. That was always the goal.
All right.
Justin, thanks so much for being with me here today. Justin, you have a YouTube channel, and I would love for you to talk about that.
So my YouTube channel is called This Justin, and it's a fun little play on words. And of course, I'm over there fighting the same fight that you guys are fighting, right? Separation of government and religion, and battling religion, I guess you could say, or supporting atheist ideals. And my most recent video that I put out was a program or a series I'm calling Reading from Right to Left. So I fill a panel up with a bunch of my left-wing friends. For example, on the last video, I had John, the Godless Engineer, on there, Trevor from Believe It or Not, I had Hale Heidi, and Mark Reed from Mark Reed Atheism on there. And I read a right-wing propaganda children's book to that panel, and they react to, well, the really shocking information that comes out of what's supposed to be a kid's book. So yeah, go over to This Justin and check out that video. It was really entertaining, and then I've got more coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of right-wing books can be considered children's books in a lot of ways. But it's good that you have to find the specific ones for that, right? I mean, we're on the same page there in terms of, folks, if you're tuning in for the first time and are wondering, what do you mean? Why are we going on the offensive here? Look, we like to talk to people about their beliefs because I think we both agree there's definitely some harm to that can come with believing the wrong things. There's certainly a lot of misinformation out there in the world right now, and we're not necessarily going to be the ones to correct the record on that, but we're going to be the ones that are going to say, hey, let's stop and think about this. And I try not to privilege any particular belief, including ones that I think are correct too. I'm happy to have folks call in to talk to us and challenge us on what we think is true. I've certainly had my convictions changed on things. As some of you know, I'm now a vegan. I've been a vegan for a few years, and that was very much in part due to people challenging me on this show and my beliefs on that. So happy to talk to people about it. I'm glad you feel the same way, Justin, that these kinds of issues are pretty important.
Yeah, I'll fight to the end for everyone's right to believe anything they want to. But there's a place and a space for those things, and then there's some spaces where those kind of things don't belong. And part of it too, like, if we talk about, for instance, this, like the 10 Commandments in schools, right? Mm-hmm. We can go there, right? We can do that. We can talk about that for a second. Yeah,
definitely.
Like, it's not even, the argument there isn't even the idea of putting these 10 Commandments on the wall, even though half of them are completely useless and the other half are like, well, duh, right? The problem with it really is, well, what about those who don't necessarily believe in that particular doctrine or that part of the Bible? What if they're Muslim or some other? They're now being separated or segregated, right? Their ideas and beliefs are no longer being shared. So it's either, in my opinion, it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or let's just keep things secular and it doesn't need to go in there at all.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We can explore that more, but we actually had a great topic that we were talking about before the show, and it was this idea about Jesus that I want to
Yeah.
talk about. Like, because you told me you had this thought recently about Jesus feeding the poor. Because right now in the year of our Lord, November 7th, 2025, SNAP benefits in the U.S. are cut off from people. There's plans about talking to reinstate some of it and stuff, but that's what's happening right now. And I guess in light of that, you were kind of thinking, well, if Jesus was around and doing stuff, or at least if he is a thing, it's curious how that's not kind of happening now. The whole, multiplying food and feeding it to people thing. It's kind of weird that he did it once. He did it a couple times while he was alive, but it's like, how come that stopped? Right? Like, why didn't that
Yeah.
keep going? That seemed like a good thing,
It
right?
really seemed like a trivial thing for Jesus, right? Like
Yeah.
for Jesus, it was as simple as for us to prepare a sandwich,
Yeah.
Jesus would just multiply food.
Mm-hmm.
But he only did it in specific circumstances at certain times. It's like, why didn't he just enter every town he visited and just was like throwing loaves of breads from his pockets? Like,
You know why, Justin? He didn't want to disrupt the market, because that would have busted, the farmers, right? They wouldn't have been able to have their place in the marketplace. So, he was really focused on the economy,
so he
I
was a
think.
capitalist.
Yeah, that's my favorite take of Jesus. I remember back when I was still on this hell site of Twitter that's now X. One of the most asinine things I think I've ever read was a whole twit long thread on why Jesus was a capitalist, and not like in an ironic sense. Like a guy who works at a church somewhere really made out this argument. It's like, if you read the Bible and think that Jesus was really into this, then maybe we are kind of screwed. Maybe this whole idea of we can come to a consensus on reality just can't work, because that's just, I don't know, pure propaganda on some level, right?
Yeah, and if we really wanted to um, I don't know, reduce this complexity a little bit more,
Yeah.
if we go all the way to a point of creation and we need food to survive, but yet food is so hard to get. Why don't we just why weren't we created with photosynthesis, for example? Like we get all the nutrients we need from the sun. As long as we go and touch grass once a day, we're good.
Well,
right?
we're meant to toil, because we got kicked out from the garden, or at least our great grandparents did, or whatever. I think that's I don't know. It kind of doesn't make sense.
I mean,
but
that there lies the reason for shows like this, and why you and I get together, and any of us get together to have these conversations, is because, man, that book can just cover its own ass all over the place, can't it? Like,
yeah, it's true. We were talking about this on Talk Heathen the other day, but on this character of Jesus, at least, a lot of people will say, well, the Bible may say this or that or whatever, but at least, Jesus was a good guy or whatever. And that always irks me, because Jesus is so inconsistent in his character based on which gospels you read. There's always this kind of, secular liberal people will always still say, well, at least the book has some good things, or at least Jesus had some good things. It's like, I don't even go that far. I don't even think you have to make that concession, honestly, to have any sense of decency.
Yeah, it's an interesting book. And there was another thing that I looked at too, is the structure of the book and the stories themselves. They're not even structurally good stories.
Yeah.
At
least for a modern English reading audience.
Yeah, the character is just too perfect, so it makes it extra hard to believe. But if I was a divine being, or even semi-divine, and I could go around and do the things that Jesus apparently did, I would just go around and be doing them all the time. I wouldn't just like, oh, you guys need some wine? You got any barrels of water around here? Boom, there you go, wine.
Right. Is there a wedding happening here? We'll make some wine, I guess.
Yeah.
They didn't even know the guy. It wasn't like, oh, this is my best friend. It was just like some guy in the story.
Why
right?
the middleman? Why even bother with the wine and food? Why not just go, you're all not hungry anymore, or you're all drunk now?
That's true. See, that'd be real creative, but I don't think they were thinking that far with that. I don't know. We'll put a pin in this real quick, because right now I think we need to talk about our question of the week, Justin. Every single week we're asking folks at home, a question, a prompt, whatever that we want people to respond to, and we're gonna bring Kelly on stage here to read it. Hello, Kelly. What's up?
Hi. How you guys doing?
Doing good, Kelly.
It's really good to see you again, Justin. It's
doing
awesome.
good until you got here, Kelly.
Of course.
That was a total opposite of line I was going to say. I was going to say we're better now that you're here, Kelly.
So like the way we're presented here, it's sort of a neutral time now betwing the two of us.
There you go.
Dan and I represent like the angel and demon on Kelly's shoulder right now.
Okay. So last week we asked, if you were invisible in church, what would you do? And here's our 3 favorite answers. From number 3, from Dwayne Johnson. I don't think the Dwayne Johnson, but from Dwayne Johnson.
It's spelled differently.
What's that?
It's spelled differently. So I think the one we know has a W.
W, yeah. You know what? I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely correct. If invisible, he says, I would cover myself in flour next to the priest or pastor and point to him and say in a scary voice, "You speak for Satan, liar."
that would make the news, right?
Somebody would definitely make the news.
Yeah. Somebody would try to record that for sure.
And number 2, from our good buddy Chuck Gatos. If I was invisible in church, when the pastor is about to read a Bible verse, I'd turn the page to something spicier.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what are your options there? I guess Song of Songs, Psalm of Songs. Yeah. And that's
you
it,
can
right?
Keep going to Exodus 21.
Yeah, or here's a better idea. Why don't you just slip in a little page from 50 Shades of Grey or something?
I was just thinking you can go to the part where Lot's daughters get him drunk and rape him too. That would be a good spicy one.
Well, Kelly, you say that, and spice is not the word I would use for that, but that's an editorial choice on your part, I suppose.
Well, there are bitter spices.
Oh God. Okay. We are definitely moving on from that. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that assessment, but okay, moving on.
And number 1, our number 1 answer, ta-da, from Anastasia. If I was invisible in church, I would take control of the collection plate after it's full, float it over to the preacher and dump it down his pants. I want to make sure it says participants, but I'm assuming it's parishioners know where their donations are going.
Okay,
right down the priest's pants.
That's kind of scary as well, because there is sort of a haunting sort of element to that one too. Almost like you're basically like Casper the ghost at that point, just kind of mess with people. So, okay. All right. Well, those are some decent answers. Thank you to everybody that gave your answers last week. And now, Kelly, I believe we have a question for this week.
We do have a question for this week.
Except for your answer, Kelly. I still don't like that. I'm not happy you said that about the spice thing, but whatever.
I'm sorry.
We're moving on.
If you could rewrite the Bible, what would it say?
If you could rewrite the Bible, what would it say? And that's like any part of the Bible, right? So like, just like a particular story or whatever. What would you do, Kelly?
I'm assuming that they want an answer that's like, in general, what would you do? What would you change? And I think I'd probably be a lot nicer and make people, I would probably say something like, you shouldn't own other people, and you really, really should, no matter what you do, keep searching keep wanting the truth.
I would make maybe the Good Samaritan about a gay guy instead, so that way people would treat gay people better, maybe, because nobody's like, oh man, those Samaritans, we don't trust them. Like, that's not a thing anymore, right? Like, we don't really care about that,
I always say, if Jesus was alive today, that story would be the Good Mexican.
Yeah, that could for American audiences that would play well, I think. I don't know, that's my answer. What do you think, Justin?
I wouldn't change a thing, but I would add a page to the very front of the book that said, the contents within are for entertainment purposes only.
Nice. Okay. Yep.
Yes,
I think that's
a
good one. I like that one. I like that answer the best, actually. So, folks, if you think you can top that, leave a comment below. I'll be surprised, because that's pretty good. I know you can do at least better than me and Kelly. But leave your answer, and we will read our top 3 answers for next week. Otherwise, I want to say thanks, Kelly, for being on stage with us.
Well, thanks for having me up here, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And all things Going good. We'll see at the end of the show. But for now, I am joined back with Justin. Justin and I were talking about video games for like 30 minutes before the show. And I enjoyed that because, you know, it's game time, baby. It's been a good year for video games. Not really related to this show or its content, but, well, you know.
We could totally spin a video game topic. Excuse me. Let me have a drink of water here real quick.
You were telling me about the Jesus Christ video game. If that's the
so
end
there was a demo that came out for a game called I Am Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I played it over on my channel. I played the whole demo, and it was so strange and to play a game. First of all, that's so incredibly well put together. It's developed by a company that isn't necessarily like, they're not like a religious gaming company. They're just a real game company. So they're literally just trying to cash in on Christianity.
Interesting.
So it's really well put together. It's in first person view. Jesus has all these magical abilities. And one of the first missions actually is you show up to the wedding, but to make the wine, right? So to turn the barrels of water into wine.
Right.
But what was interesting is they did a little bit of like, they have to take a little creative control in the narrative of the story of the game, right? To make it interesting and more fun. And when you arrive into town, it was so strange because your mom is there, right? So Mary, Jesus' mom, is there.
All right.
And she's like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. I was just telling everybody about how awesome you are and how you could save this wedding because they have run out of wine. Yeah, like it was such a real mom-son moment to be like, I'm glad you came. They've ran out of wine, or the wine didn't get delivered, or so I forget the exact like. But it was really, really, really funny. And then there's this whole mini game where you create the wine. It was really good.
In this game, because I remember there was a trailer for this game like a year or two ago, and I just thought it was like fake. I didn't think it would actually turn to like a real game. How long is this game? Is it played through
the demo took about an hour to finish.
Really? But is the game out now?
It's not out yet. It's still on just demo only.
Because I'm thinking, like, what's the, like, is it 8 hours to do the whole freaking Gospels? Like, what do you do with that? I don't know. There's only so much.
I mean, if we want to speak about it a little bit critically, there was a moment where I then had to go wander the desert for 40 days and 40 nights where I was like,
actually? Yeah. Or is this a bit? Is that in the game?
Yeah. So in the game, you're about to leave on your journey to go wander the desert. And I was excited. I was like, oh, this is going to be like some Resident Evil Silent Hill stuff going on. This is going to be awesome.
And fight demons and stuff. That'd be cool.
Yeah, but no, they just cut to 40 days later and you walk out of the desert. I'm like, oh, what an opportunity.
They should have had a survival. Well, I guess, so like, you know, in a traditional survival game is like, oh, you need to find resources and drink water and stuff. But like the whole point of that story is like, he didn't eat anything for like 40 days. So I guess it's like.
They could have still done like some kind of temptation mechanic where like, you know, maybe Satan is tempting you as Jesus with different things and whether or not you choose to take them or not. And maybe you have to like allow yourself to be taken in by certain temptations in order to survive the 40 days. But then, you know, you can pray to get some of that temptation back. I don't know.
Okay, see, your game design philosophy is way more interesting than the source material that this is based off of. I'm pretty sure most Christians would be like, no, he can't be tempted at all. So it's like, okay, there's no gameplay right there, right?
Well, isn't that what the story is originally? Was he went into the desert and he didn't eat anything for 40 days, but
but it's after the 40 days when Satan shows up and is like, hey, don't you want? You can turn that rock into bread. And Jesus is like, no. And then there's like one other thing. And then he's like, hey, you can jump off this building if you want. And he's like, nah. So I guess it's just a dialogue box. And it's just yes or no every time again.
By the way, the game is fully voice acted. Like the level of, it's fantastic, to be completely honest. Like the level
you sound impressed by this.
They gave Jesus like a spell wheel the same way The Witcher does in Witcher 3. Like he's got a spell wheel and he can do all kinds of different
miracles and stuff.
Yeah. And you've got to unlock the miracles as you travel through the story. So the demo ends with you being on the pier where you're like meeting Peter and Paul or whatever for the first time, and you're gathering your apostles, and you're doing so by performing miracles and like making it easier for them to catch fish in the water. So you've got to like stare at the water and like duplicate the fish in the water. And then now the apostles like, look at all the fish we can catch. And then they start following you around and the demo ends.
Oh my God.
it's so really, really well put together.
Oh man, if you die in the game, do you go to hell before you get to
I
save
haven't
people?
identified a loss condition. I'm not sure you can.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Okay. Wow.
but
I have so many questions about this game. I kind of want to play it now because you seem very
the
enthralled.
the demo's 100% free on Steam, so like you can totally just go and grab it and play it.
Wow, we're doing free ads for this game right now. That's crazy. I may need to check that out because it's like when I think of the Gospels, I don't know how you would gamify that without being sacrilegious. You know,
I mean,
to be more interesting. But
who knows? It could be the dawn of a whole new interpretation of the Gospels.
Yeah, there was a game that came out a few years ago about Muhammad. And I remember that one specifically. Yeah, because so there's all kinds of well, there's a lot of controversies about how you can depict Muhammad, right? So they don't actually show him in the games because it's all first person, and every time like it's implied that he's speaking, there's like a wind chime noise or whatever because they didn't want to have a voice for him and stuff. So I remember that being a thing. But I guess you could do a little bit more with Jesus. I don't know. Is this an American studio that made this, or is this like a different country? You know?
I forget the name of the actual studio, but they've made I can't remember now. But they did make a game that like I would wager like that half of us have all played. I just can't remember the game that they made, but yeah, it was the first thing that I checked on was the studio because usually these kind of games are made by religious organizations and stuff, but this is not a religious first.
That's what I want to know. Either a Christian organization made it or some place in Taiwan that doesn't know anything about Christianity. Like I'm imagining a Neon Genesis Evangelion situation where it's like, oh, we just put the Christian stuff in here because we thought it was cool, you know? Yeah. But anyway, I could talk about that all day, but I know folks, you guys are here because we're a call-in show and you probably want to hear us talk to callers. So I think we should do that now. What do you think, Justin?
Let's pick up the phone and see who's there.
All right, let's see who wants to talk to us. Before we get to calls, let's thank our patrons. Thank you so much, everybody that donates to the Patreon. I want to give a shout out to the patron of the week. This week's patron of the week is going to be Lauren Z. Thank you so much, Lauren Z. And thank you to everybody that donates on the Patreon. You guys are amazing. If you'd like to donate, link to that is in the YouTube description, or if you're listening on podcast, it's in the description of wherever you're at, tiny.cc/Patreon TW. Thank you, everybody. And with that out of the way, let's take our first caller here. We have Michelle, who wants to talk to us from New York. Michelle, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Yeah, I was wondering, would you two like to answer maybe a question I have, maybe two questions that are connected?
Answer two questions. We could probably do two questions. I think that's fine. Yeah.
I've got a basket full of answers. I just hope they go with the question.
There you go. Yeah. Let's hear it.
Okay. Do you guys think why was it said that religion is the opium of the masses? I always forget who said that, like Mao Zedong or something like that.
That's Carl Marx that said that originally.
Oh, yeah, Marx, right.
Mm-hmm.
I always forget. Always sounds like Mao Zedong, so that's why it's wrong.
But anyway, are you asking why Karl Marx said that?
Well, what I'm asking why did he say it? Did it mean something? I mean, obviously it meant something, and I know he had a reason for saying it. But has that reason changed over time? Are there new and modern reasons that why it could be said that religion is the opium for the masses?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scholar on Marx. Okay, so I'd have to tell you to go look at people who have more intensely studied the guy. I know he was really into Hegel. And I know that there's a lot of different contexts that happen there. Marx's whole thing is about class analysis, right? So he's introducing these ideas of saying, hey, here's this proletariat and here's this sort of business class, and this is what separates people. And from my understanding, his commentary about religion is that religion is another way to sort of quell working class people from uprising in a way. In that sense, he's not too different from Nietzsche's interpretation of Christianity, which is that Christianity is sort of a slave religion. This idea that Jesus is sort of asking us to be sheep, literally, to sort of follow rather than lead. So that's my understanding, but there's probably a greater context that could be said by people who are more knowledgeable about it. I don't know, Justin, do you have any insight?
I'm not super up on the question or the topic. This is the first time I've ever heard that even said. The first thing that jumps out to me, though, is the idea of if it's an opiate, then it's highly addictive. And so if I try to interpret this question just on its surface, being the first time hearing it, it kind of makes sense from that point. I mean, I notice, especially with, and Dan, you'll probably agree with this, some of the more hardcore religious people, the more deep into it they are, the harder it is to get them to like understand reason and skepticism and like, you know, put it aside for a second and try to think about things logically, because you know they're so addicted to it, they just can't abandon it or move beyond it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at things right now. I'm like Googling stuff as we're talking about this. But like one interpretation I'm seeing that's interesting is that some people say that they misinterpret this idea because it's supposed to be sort of a way to talk about addiction in some sort of way, because opium was known for its addictive qualities. So it's a way for, you know, religion is sort of this way to sort of quell some of these the sort of quell people from taking action, right? To quell people from going away from what's comfortable for them. So, you know, I guess there's a couple of different ways to look at that, Michelle. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think the both of you made good points. All right, I agree. And now the second part of the question.
Okay.
What would you say about believing something? Like, can we believe things with rationality and things that are logical, even though they may be unfalsifiable?
Can we believe things rationally, even if they may be unfalsifiable?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Believing in God, believing in deities, angels, believing in that kind of thing, in that kind of vein.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's an interesting question philosophically, because there's kind of, so like rationalism is like an entire school of thought within philosophy. Okay. And rationalism has this idea of, well, we can understand true things based on reason alone. And that's a very particular idea, because that doesn't mean necessarily like using science or using empiricism, right? That's actually different, because it's taking outside observations and coming to conclusions via, you know, synthesis, right? Can we know things just by reason alone is kind of an open question as far as I am concerned in terms of philosophy, because there's a lot of people that don't have a consensus on that. For example, 1 + 1 = 2, right? Seems like a very basic, obvious truth. Do we know that because we see one apple and we see another apple and we see that they make two? Or do we know that because we can compute that outside of our observations and our own reality? Is that a material fact that something has a oneness or a two-ness about it? Or is this just sort of a system that we've concocted that sort of makes sense to us internally? So based on your answer to that, you would be able to know about what you could say about God in some way or another, which is, you know, inconclusive, I guess I would say. Sorry, this is kind of a long answer, but it opens up a lot of can of worms. What were you going to say, Michelle?
Dan, I got something great for you. You want to hear it? I'll give you some mathematical sauce. You ready for this?
Well, maybe. Wait, I want to hear Justin's response first, because like I was talking for a bit there.
Sorry, go ahead, Justin. Go ahead.
I was going to say that if the idea here is that if a rational person can believe in something that's unfalsifiable, then I would also expect that person to have enough self-awareness to realize that the thing that they're choosing to believe in is unfalsifiable. So, for example, if I want to believe in aliens, cool. I can't falsify that right now, but I'm just going to live my life as though there's aliens out there. Now, if I get to the point where I start wearing tinfoil hats, I'm no longer very rational or logical. So then the question kind of falls apart there, right? So, yeah, you can believe in things that are unfalsifiable. If you're going to be logical and reasonable, though, you're going to put limitations on how much of that belief is going to control your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say rationality is sort of culturally conditioned in some ways, though. I think I would make that argument, but I don't know if that's something you'd want to explore with me, Michelle, because that's kind of a whole separate idea. But you had some sauce you were going to give.
Yeah, but I was going to say mathematical sauce. I'm going to lay some mathematical sauce down on you, right?
Okay.
Dan and Justin. Okay, so when it comes to 1 and 1 making 2, well, 2 halves of 1 whole apple can feed 2 hungry bellies. So go figure.
I might have missed part. I think you were telling a joke there, and I might have missed the punchline because I'm not a smart man, Michelle.
No, you are a smart man, Dan. Don't ever put yourself down or apologize to yourself. Always be proud. You put me in quite the you hit me in the thinker quite many times on your show, so I appreciate it.
Hit me in the thinker.
My joke.
I love that.
My joke, huh?
I love that he's hit you in the thinker. That's so good.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll have to remember that one.
Yeah. My joke was 2 halves of 1 whole apple can feed 2 hungry children.
1 half of 1 whole apple can feed 2
halves.
No,
2 halves?
2 halves.
2 halves of 1 whole apple.
1 whole apple can feed 2 hungry children.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe it could be a snack.
4/4 of a whole apple could feed 4 hungry children.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not sure what the joke was. I might have missed that, Michelle, but it doesn't matter too much. Let me give you something else for your thinker here. Okay. When we're talking about rationality, it's easy to put other people in this place of, well, they're not smart enough, they're not thinking about stuff rationally, they're not doing what's best for them. But again, I think rationality can be a bit of a subjective thing and can matter culturally. If you're a medieval peasant who isn't educated, right? Like maybe you can't read, maybe you've never left your hometown, and all you know from what people have told you is there is a God and all these things happen and there's all these decrees, and you want to live your life in a way so that you can avoid the hell and torment that would come if you don't live otherwise. I mean, that would make sense to you in some sort of way, right? Like there is a way that people are able to rationalize religion in a way to avoid consequences, right? And I think when it comes down to brass tacks for a lot of people, fear is a motivating factor. So in some ways, that is a very rational way to view a belief as sort of utilitarian in a sense, right? I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's what you should do, but rationality is a tricky thing because it depends on people's aims on what people really mean by being rational in this sense. So it's not a word I like to use too much because I think you can make different kinds of justifications for people's sense of rationality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Well, gentlemen, I think we've sussed out this conversation as far as we can suss it out. I think volumes could be written on it. But I won't trouble or take any more of your time. And I will say thank you very much for the phone call and thank you for being convivial with me.
All right, Michelle. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Man, that was
like the most casual, just like it almost felt like we weren't doing a show. We were just on a phone. Just be like, I got a question real quick.
Yeah, I got a twofer.
Yeah.
And also, yeah. That was interesting. We talked about Karl Marx, we talked about rationality, and we talked about apples. So
and hitting people in the thinker.
And hitting people in the thinker. Yeah, you're right. I'm glad you called that out. That's a good line. That's a
really
good one.
fun.
I'm
That's really
keeping that
fun.
in the back of
That's
my
a
pocket.
T-shirt. That's a T-shirt somewhere.
I agree. Let's move on to another caller here. We have Maykel, who is calling from the Netherlands. Maykel, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hello. You can just call me Michael. It's like
Michael.
an American
Okay.
way. Yeah.
Sounds great. I love doing things the American way. Thank you for that, Michael. Go ahead.
You're welcome. I saw the poll, and I might have something else to discuss about. But I saw that the poll said, "Is Jesus good?" And my answer to that is yes. So.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me about that. Why is your answer yes?
Because there's a lot of scriptures that basically point out the fact that he is without sin. Flat out plainly. Yeah.
And I'm assuming you're a theist as well. In fact, I think you marked to our caller that you're theist. Okay. That would make sense. You know, if I was a theist as well, I would also say that Jesus is good, right? I think most theists would. I think it'd be hard to be a theist and say Jesus is bad, right? Because I don't know what you're doing there with that, right? So yeah, I think that some stuff makes sense there. So basically, because of Scripture and what Jesus has done in Scripture, that would make him good. That's kind of your case then, yeah?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay. Yeah. I'll pass it to you, Justin. What do you think?
Yeah, so like you said, it'd be hard pressed to be a theist who didn't think Jesus was good. And actually, you know what? I think that's what makes the question kind of interesting. Was Jesus a good person? Is even though we may not believe in a lot of the scriptures, or we find a lot of contradictions or problems, for the most part, I think even a non-theist, if we wanted to just treat Jesus like a character in a story, could still make an argument that his intentions were well-meaning, right? Like, you know, we were talking at the top of the show about him creating food for the masses. I can't find a single problem with that at all. Like, that's inherently that was a slick, good move. Where the question gets more interesting is, why didn't he just do that all the time? Why didn't he just fill everyone's baskets up with bread and wine everywhere he went all the time? And you know, like you pointed out, like maybe he was watching out for the markets or something, I guess. But
he didn't want to crash the bread markets.
Yeah,
and the fish market is what I think. That's
why the question in the poll, first of all, is to inspire people to call in. So thanks for calling in. But it also is an interesting question, because I think we could probably even find, atheists in our community that would be like, no, on the surface, Jesus was good.
Yeah. If you subscribe to the idea, so here's what's interesting as an atheist, why I have to assume that Jesus is kind of bad, right? Because if you subscribe to the idea, which most atheists do, that Jesus was a real person, right? And that the gospel accounts are based on this real person that did exist, you also kind of have to assume, if you're an atheist, that these accounts are either exaggerations or fabrications of events, right? And that could either be because his followers made up these events, or that Jesus himself wasn't truthful about who he was and what he claimed to be either, which would make him a liar, right? Which would make him a person that is of ill repute. You could say bad, right? But not necessarily good, right? In that respect, in the same way that there are religious leaders today that say, "Hey, I'm the Son of God," or "People should worship me," et cetera, et cetera. That's basically what Jesus was doing back in those times as well. And so I wouldn't hold Jesus to be any better than I would any televangelist or any modern day prophet or modern day apostle, right? It's kind of doing the same thing. Yeah. So he doesn't get any moral credit from me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, if you remove God out of the equation and it's just all naturalistic. And I wouldn't believe that Jesus would just be just like any other man. He would have flaws. But I don't stand on that ground. So it makes it a little different,
Yeah. It does.
There's also another position you could take too, is that if Jesus, if you're one of the theists who believe that Jesus was also God, and they're the benchmark for all of morality. Jesus also didn't come in and start going, yo, we got it all wrong in the Old Testament. And like, you know, slavery is actually bad. So like, let's not do that anymore. There is no, from what I understand or from what I know, red letter text of Jesus saying that's not a thing we're going to do anymore. Like he doesn't disavow that. So if they are the benchmark for morality, they didn't walk back any of the things that we would say are immoral today, which could also kind of underline him not necessarily being a good person.
Yeah, that could also go into like ideas of like subjective versus objective like morality, because like you could say that Jesus was maybe a good person for the time in which he lived in, right? And I think like maybe you could go that far in some respect, but also like at the same time, like you said, he didn't really denounce the institution of slavery. He never said, hey, all men and women should be treated equally at all times. Also, everybody should be able to vote. Like he wasn't super into democracy or anything. Maybe he would have been for it, but I can't imagine he would be. You know, so like there's definitely weaknesses to the idea that Jesus is sort of a universal good, right? But I don't know. That's kind of us talking here. What do you think, Maykel?
Well, if Jesus is not the universal standard, then what is?
Okay. Well,
and what are you gonna replace it with? Because I don't think atheism does it for me, because I used to be one. So
yeah. So different atheists might have different answers to this. I'm curious what Justin's answer to this, but my position would be I don't think there is a universal standard. I don't think there is one. I don't think any human being has perfect knowledge of morality or what that even looks like. I think it's in part informed by our social norms, but also in part informed by some things we can objectively measure, but are ultimately held by subjective values. For example, I don't want people to suffer needlessly, right? And suffering is a value that I attribute negatively to. What's the objective basis of that? There is no objective basis of that. It's just because I'm a human being and I inherently don't like that, right? So it is based on sort of human feelings at the end of the day. But you can build systems around that. It's you just have to have people agree on, you know, those sense of values, which of course people don't, and that's why we have all the trouble that we have in ethics in philosophy, right? But as far as Jesus being a great standard for that, I don't think so. I think every progressive reform we've had since the Age of Enlightenment has been almost in spite of what Jesus has necessarily advocated for or have wanted. You know, we mentioned the institution of slavery. You talked about democracy, things like that. But Justin, yeah, what's your take?
I mean, I'll start from the beginning with the most obvious and the most common answer that we give to this is that atheism doesn't say anything about morality to start with.
Yeah.
It's just saying one thing, and it's that we're not convinced of any gods in the world, right? And I could also just take it one step further and say, Maykel, that you're just as atheist as we are, except we also just don't believe in your God.
Yeah.
But for the sake of argument, let's just play with...
No. That's not entirely true, though.
Right, so there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to... I just wanted to finish the sentence, Maykel, and just add that for the sake of the argument and the discussion, we're going to go ahead and insert a whole bunch of like underlying beliefs to our atheism then, okay? And I would argue and say that my morality is mine. It's circumstantial. It's what's going to get me to the next stage of my life the best. And if I think murdering is bad, then I'm going to align myself with other people who would also agree that unaliving people is not a good idea. And then we're going to create a community where we don't allow that kind of behavior. And if you decide to come into our community and unalive people, then we're going to punish you for that behavior. And things just go down and down and down to where we then have government and police and people who keep those laws and morals in place for us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Go ahead, Maykel.
Well, first of all, I had to refute a little statement that you said that that you went one God further in your unbelief. I don't think the gods, like from all the pagan religions and stuff, I think those are real deities. I mean, if I look at from a biblical standpoint, with the 1/3 of the angels that fell from heaven, masquerading as gods, sure, but would I follow that? No, but as for the moral thing, well, then when it really comes down to it, is then that you basically believe Jesus is a liar when he said he is the truth, the way, and the life, right? I mean, if you really just deny him flat out and say, "Oh, we know it better, we can do it better,"
I'm gonna throw one extra one in here for you. I don't believe Jesus existed, so I'm not sure he was around to say those things at all.
Yeah. So there is the mythicist position on this as well, right? But yeah, I mean, if you take the position that majority of atheists do believe that Jesus existed, right? And I would say, yeah, I do think Jesus lied on that. I don't think he was the way, the truth, and the light. He definitely wasn't the first person in history to speak on ethics, and certainly wasn't the last. And I don't think his way is necessarily superior than to other people who have proposed, ethical ways of living.
All right. Well, I'm not so sure about the history and stuff. I've never really been digging into the history when it comes to the existence of Jesus, but based on his teachings, and the things I learned in my life, and when you apply the word and you bear the fruits of it, then I can only infer the man existed. They couldn't just make all this stuff up. That's no.
I'll be honest. That's a whole other can of worms.
It is.
And we can go there if we want, but I'd like to keep going on the track of what you called in about, right? Which is, was Jesus good? Because I think that's an interesting question too. So I think Justin's willing to say, for the sake of argument, let's say Jesus was real, right? Was he good? Again, there are some things you could point to about Jesus not being great. Like, he cursed a fig tree for not producing fruit one time. That's kind of weird. He didn't have great things to say about other groups of people, Pharisees, right? And maybe he was making some cultural commentary, but you could argue that's not nice. He whipped a bunch of people out of temple. That wasn't super great. And you can make it a larger case, which I think Justin was kind of alluding to, that like, he did feed certain people at certain periods of time, but he didn't keep doing that. And one might argue, well, if you fail to commit an action that you otherwise could do, that's argued as negligence, right? And so is it negligence to ignore other hungry people when you could feed them and have the power to do so? One could make that case. So there's different grounds by which we could look at this and say, hey, maybe he's not as good as he could be, or maybe not the way, the truth, and the life, right? But I don't know. What do you think, Maykel?
Yeah, you bring up a lot of points, and it's hard for me to remember them all. For example, like the cursing the fig tree, for example. Did you also know why he did it?
He did it because the tree bared no fruits, and there's arguments, of course, that it's a metaphor, not really a literal fig tree that he cursed. So if you go there, that's one thing.
I believe it was a literal fig tree, but it's also it's also a typology of no fruits in Israel. Because of how many people rejected him.
Yeah, but the tree didn't do anything wrong. The tree's just being a tree. Why it's got to be a curse,
Yeah,
I mean, can you really?
I heard the. I think. Yeah, I can't remember it very well, but I think it was explained with how do you call it? It says the fig tree. Shoot. Sorry. Whoops. No, I think I should not be arguing about that, but
it's okay. No, it's just one minor point.
That it didn't bear any. That the tree was really boring. That was the whole point.
That I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, cursing a fig tree for not producing fruit is not an exciting scenario.
Based on seasonal stuff, I should not argue on that one. I don't know the answer to that. So, but what was the other arguments you talked about?
Well, so again, I'm cherry picking some particular examples, right?
Yeah,
But like one,
you had the fig tree, and then you said,
well, there was the temple. You know, he whipped a bunch of people at the temple because they were you know, selling stuff. Now,
yeah.
if you believe in a rule of law, right, and these people were breaking the law, then the lawful thing would be for them to face penalties outlined in a law, right? We don't, if somebody is you know, stealing from a bank, right, we don't expect the state to just whip somebody because they stole from a bank, right? We'd want them to have trial, and we'd want them to, you know, prove that these charges happen, and then give them the punishment that's on the books. That could be a fine, or that could be jail time, right? Instead, he chose violence as retribution there, which, as some people would say, is not, you know, a good thing to do in some regards. So, you know, that's just another example.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty close connected to the old generation, you know, with my family. So if you were doing something silly, you were in a place where you are not supposed to be, and they got angry or whatever, you know, or even if you go into somebody else's garden, for example, and they come out, you know, because Jesus said, what are you doing in my Father's house? You know, making it a market. Let's say you go in a place and you're not in somebody's place and you're not doing something you're supposed to do. They have the right to kick you out. You know, I don't see that I don't have any problems with.
Kicking somebody out and whipping somebody are different, though. You know,
it kind of brings up another little interesting question, too, because we're talking about Jesus and his inherent goodness, right? Is Jesus a good or a bad person? Are we going to measure him from the point of view of like he is God, or are we comparing him to other humans? Because I think a human or a person who would have a moment of weakness and lose their temper and do something terrible, like drop kick somebody out of their house, there may be a path for like forgiveness for them to be like, I lost my head, I wasn't in the right space, I had a bad day, lost my wallet earlier in the day, and like someone might be able to go like, okay, dude, fine, I forgive you, don't do it again. But you know, is Jesus on the same measuring stick as an average person? And is he capable of losing his temper? You know, and is he forgiven for losing his temper, or should he be measured as a better person?
Yeah.
Well, if he did lose his temper, and you know, and he fell into sin, then all the other scriptures are mute. Then he is not without sin. So how is that going to work? You know, I don't think he did.
So he didn't lose his temper, and he willingly, knowingly, and clear-minded whipped some people.
Yeah. I don't know how the situations were back then. You know, people were a lot rougher than we people today. I mean, mankind has gotten really soft, if you ask me. So, it might be harsh saying that, but yeah, I grew up in a different way. So I still know the things of the old ways a little bit. No, actually, I didn't grow up religiously. So let that be known.
Yeah.
No, so I think that is more like I can't say that there is an absolute measure stick of saying Jesus was too harsh, or no. Maybe to today's society where people are a little bit, you know, people are more soft. But when you look at other cultures, it happens there too. You know, like they get kicked away from places, and you know, get lost, get out, you know, like that.
Well, I think that this kind of points to this idea that morality is culturally relative in some ways, right? Like if we are to bring any critiques about Jesus and his behavior, it is looking at it through a modern lens. I can't deny that because I'm a modern human being. But that does kind of bring the question whether some of the actions that Jesus did would be considered acceptable at any point in time. I'll give you one more example of this, Michael, because I was thinking about it. There is the part where there's a guy that says, I want to follow you, but I have to bury my father, right? Because his father has just died, and he says, I have to do this. And Jesus is saying, hey, you know, follow me, right? Forget about your dad and just do it. Follow me and do that. Like, you know, if say like a modern religious cult leader said that, I think we would be very easy to rebuke that person and say, wow, that's a very cultish behavior to cut people off from your family and just tell them to follow me and do what I want instead. But we look at it from Jesus and we say, well, he is the greatest moral teacher on earth, so this is acceptable, right? But you see how that might cause dissonance for some people, because it doesn't seem to follow, acceptable standards for morality.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't know. I mean, if I look at things, for example, when I wasn't a believer, I looked at death very differently than I am today. And it's kind of like when it's over, it's just over, right? In that sense of, okay, he passed away, he moved on, or wherever you're gonna go, depending on what you believe, then based on what the scripture says. And but I remember to Jesus, like, but I remember Jesus saying, like, let the dead bury the dead, but thou go and preach the kingdom of God. So yeah, I mean, eventually, what is more important in that sense? You see, that's the whole jig of it. It's like, if you're from your standpoint, you would say, yeah, I'm gonna mourn my father, and but when you're kingdom minded, let's call it like that, then you're gonna say, okay, yes, Jesus, I'm gonna follow you. We're gonna preach the kingdom of God. Yeah. I have no objections against that. It is, yeah. I mean, and then, yeah, you can ask the question, what are the other people are going to think about you? Okay, well, let them think what they want to think. I mean, if you really are I want to be a disciple, or you want to follow Jesus, then you're going to have to give it all up. That's how serious this is in that sense. So it's kind of right.
I actually think that's a fair response. I don't really have much to say to that. I think, like, if you believe that Jesus really is that guy, and I guess if he's that good enough, you want to be able to follow him. I guess to me, it kind of just goes back to, well, is he that guy? Right? Is he actually the real one? Because unfortunately, he's not the first person to say he's that guy, and he won't be the last. He isn't the last, surely. There's been other people since then. So,
do you have any examples for that?
Of other people claiming to be the Son of God?
Well,
there's like a whole Wikipedia article for that. You don't need me telling you.
No. I just want to know if you have any names or whatever, because I know the stories that Jesus was supposedly a regurgitation of the sun gods, plagiarized and all that stuff, but scripturally that doesn't really match up, because it does, the Bible speaks about the whole Babylonian system and the worship of the sun, moon, and stars, and so on, that we should not be doing that. So that's where all that stuff came from. So I think it's just a counterfeit religion, I look at it from a biblical standpoint. So
you don't even have to look at pagan religions for that. There were other people that claimed to be a fulfillment of the Messiah, specifically in ancient Judea. A lot of it we don't have full records on, because they didn't catch on as much, right? But in part, the way that the gospel narratives are laid out is to sort of counteract other criticisms that people have in Jesus not fulfilling that role. Because, of course, remember, when not everybody immediately became a Christian, Judaism was still a thing, and is still a thing for a very long time. And folks are not necessarily convinced about Jesus being the fulfillment of that role. And other people have fulfilled that role, or claim to fulfill the role of the Son of Man or the Son of God in various capacities.
No, I wouldn't know which names you're talking about, to be honest. It's kind of new to me, to be honest.
Well, David Koresh comes to mind. Definitely said he was the Son of God. Obviously that's a modern example, but again, like, if you go to Wikipedia, there's tons of other people, particularly Jewish people, that have claimed to be the Son of God.
All right. No, I have to personally look into that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fine.
The way it is. Never heard it before, so But
well, again, but pre Jesus,
ideas about that. But
I understand that. Yeah, like pre Jesus, you don't find a lot because they don't have scriptures for those kinds of heresies. They kind of came and died. But there's a lot more you find post Jesus than you do pre Jesus. So,
all right. Yeah, and there was another objection you had was about how Jesus treated the Pharisees. Now, I know how you people think about religion, right? And the hypocrisy that is going on there. Because I tell you, I don't like it any much as you do, and they deserve that harsh treatment. Like people preaching that you should give. Well, in the meanwhile, they're getting their money, or well, how did the Bible say it? That they elevate their own ideas and traditions above the scriptures. They add stupid rules and they put them on people, and yet they don't keep them themselves. Those.
But Michael. Yeah, it's interesting because Jesus kind of did the same thing in a way. So, for example, when Jesus didn't rest on the Sabbath and he did a miracle, he was like, "Oh, I don't have to follow that rule actually." Because I'm the Son of God, and the laws were made for man, and I'm not him, right? And he kind of does his own kind of interpretations of scriptures. So, in a way, he's kind of very similar in that regard.
No, he's the Lord of the Sabbath. See, he is our rest. Well, Jesus said, "My Father is always working," so you expected the Son to do the same thing. He said like it wasn't. I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like God made man for. I don't know exactly how the phrase went, and like God made man for the Sabbath, or I don't know exactly, but I need to look that up very quickly, I guess.
That's okay. No, it's
okay.
It's fine. I mean, I don't expect you to rattle off the verse from memory. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you in the sense it's hard to criticize Jesus against his standards, the ones that he made, because like he's the guy that made his standards, right? So like I would be more critical from a secular perspective. And I the only way that I feel like I could convince you is if Jesus somehow broke his own standards, right? But like, I'm not necessarily arguing that Jesus' standards were good, right? That's the thing. I'm arguing for a sort of different kind of standard by which to judge. So it's kind of a catch-22, right? I don't know. Do you, Justin? I want you to pipe in on this too.
I understand.
My mind keeps coming back to the whole leading by example, right? It's this. Yeah. If you want me to follow you, believe in you, and support you, and encourage you, and tell people about you and stuff, then you got to be someone who I would strive to want to be like, and I don't want to be like Jesus.
Yeah,
I'd like to be. I think that I can be and am, and most people are better. So
interesting. Yeah, Michael, you said you had something you want to say.
Oh, no, I was listening. That's quite the statement to think you're better than Jesus, man.
Jesus thought he was better than everybody else. I don't know, I mean,
and then it's a question like, okay, by what standard? Your own standard? But what does that make you? Does it make you God? How does that work?
It doesn't make me God, and yes, by my own standards.
Okay, well then you're self-righteous.
But what Jesus was too, though, right? I mean, he literally judged people by his own standards.
But he's God. He has the right to.
Supposedly. I mean, that's the thing. If we don't think Jesus is God, he's just another person, right? With another person in history who has ideas about what's right and wrong. So maybe that's what it is. Before we can even consider whether his standards are worth looking at or worth following, we have to prove that Jesus is God, right? And some people say maybe that we don't have to go that far, but that maybe that's where we'd have to start. Sorry, say that again, Michael?
Yeah, then you're gonna have to get to work to figure that out. You know,
I mean,
that's the way it is.
Michael, I'll be honest. I've been getting to work. I've been running this show for like half a decade, a little more than half a decade now. I've been putting in the work. I've had folks try to call in.
Literally the purpose of this is we're seeking it out. We're looking for people like you to come in here with something to convince us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I usually try to do. You know, it's like people also like, well, prove me God exists. Well, if you want to have the proof, life never works that way where people just spoon feed you everything. If you want to have something, you have to go get it. If you want to know something, you have to learn. You have to read. You gotta, you gotta put the work in. Because if there is a God and He knows your heart, then He surely knows.
So it was in looking and reading and being raised Catholic that got me here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Same with me, Michael, because I was also a Christian before this, a studious one. In fact, I did college ministry and definitely dedicated at least part of my life in Jesus. Maybe my problem was it wasn't entirely in Jesus, but the more I looked into stuff, the more I started to have questions and couldn't figure stuff out. And I definitely read books, Michael. I definitely talked to people. I talk to people every week, so I'm still having these conversations.
Yeah, I see. Well, I mean, it's possible. I mean, like for example, your buddy said he was a Catholic. Now, I have a very big objection against Catholicism.
I'm sure you do.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder who has the more objections, you or Justin?
I mean, I still remember sitting in religion class in my Catholic high school and being assigned certain chapters to read, and the teachers being like, okay, we're going to go read these chapters and read these chapters. And I'm like, wait a minute, why did we just skip an entire book or an entire bunch of chapters? Why didn't we start from the beginning and go all the way through? Well, because if you go back and you read those chapters, you're going to find stories about, daughters getting their dads drunk and having a night of sin with them, or like bears mauling 40 children, or like you're going to find some stories in that book that I found very interesting, that the teachers were like cherry picking the ones they wanted us to read and skipping over the more objectionable stuff. So yeah, anybody who stops reading what's assigned to them and actually decides to go dig a little deeper, it's something that's been said lots of times, and I think it's fairly true. The best path to atheism is reading that Bible.
Yeah.
No, for me, it's actually the other way around. I guess it's also depends where you come from. If you already have bad experience with Catholicism, for example, I can't blame you. When it comes to all kind of corruption that's going on there, man, it's.
But Michael,
I mean,
I don't mean to interrupt you,
go.
But I need to point this out because you've immediately framed Justin's point of view as, well, he's not a Catholic anymore because he's had bad experiences, and that's not Justin's perspective, right?
Well,
Justin's. It's more that he came to a more academic understanding of his faith and didn't agree with it, right? Oftentimes, Michael, there's a perception within Christianity and Christian culture that the reason why atheists are the way they are is because, they had a bad church experience, or, they just didn't do the work, right? And if you talk to folks like us, we often give very different perspectives on that.
Sure. Okay. I'll take those words back. It does happen, though. It does happen.
I don't. Yeah, of course, it happens. But is it the majority of people?
My school, my teachers were some of the greatest people ever. My school experience, in a nutshell, was fantastic. It was just those religion classes and the moments of having to read through the Bible and the question marks coming up of like, why are we reading Genesis 1? But not Exodus 21, right? Like, why are we skipping through some of these other chapters? What Dan said is my experience was not a bad one. Now, it's a little funny that my school had to change its name a couple years after I graduated because the guy it was named after ended up being one of those more bad Catholic people. So that was the thing. But anyways.
What a surprise.
What a surprise.
Yeah, No, I mean, sure. I mean, there are some sensitive subjects in the Bible. Most of the time, I hardly even read the Old Testament because it's hardly even relevant anymore, apart from seeing certain cross references between the Old and the New. So I'm still learning myself in all that stuff. But yeah, I have came across it with the bears tearing the boys apart, and yeah, I mean, can I give an answer to you right now? No, I don't. So,
but isn't that interesting that even though you can't give an answer to it, you're still choosing to believe in it or otherwise justify it overall?
Well, I don't. If I don't have an answer, I can't say I'm gonna justify this or that. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible I couldn't figure out until I don't know how many years later. It's not like you're going to a snack bar. It's not fast food.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting though? Like I imagine if I was a huge believer in like Das Kapital, we were talking about Karl Marx earlier, and I was like, well, I can't tell you about this chapter here on economics, or I can't tell you about this chapter on class consciousness, but I believe the whole book, right? Like you would kind of find that a bit absurd, right? Like, wouldn't you? Why would I defend a book so wholeheartedly that I don't understand or can't fully critique?
Well, I mean, like, you can critique it. Like for example, I critique who was it? Some of the wickedness of King Solomon, and with I don't know how many wives and stuff. Because that's sin. All that stuff. So but I don't know. I would have to look into it for myself. Like for example, now that you bring it up, it's now the second time I've heard it with the bears, for example. Then then I have to make sure I have an answer ready the next time. That's how I do it.
But Maykel, isn't that interesting? And I know Justin wants to chime in too, but let's listen to that chain of logic again real quick. I don't know the answer to this, so I need to seek out what the defense is for this. Why not just, well, what is the truth of this, right? Because Justin and I might say that the truth of this is a culmination of stories that people have come up with at a given culture and a given point in time that may not reflect reality, right? But like as a Christian, you kind of can't say that, right? You kind of have to have some sort of defense, for lack of a better word, right?
Well, I mean, it depends. It's kind of, I'm just being honest. I don't have an answer for that at the moment.
And I appreciate that.
There's
100%.
Parts of the Bible I don't know very well, and that's one of them. It's probably if I'm gonna sit down for a day and just gonna read and compare everything together, then it's like, okay, it can be that easy, and sometimes it takes time, prayer, reading, researching, maybe looking into other commentaries, or I don't like to lean on too many commentaries. I rather come to the conclusion on my own. So,
but I think the point Dan's trying to make here is Maykel, is that you've read the headline and you went, all right, I understand the whole article, right? Like that's kind of the point we're trying to demonstrate here is, I love the attitude. You're perfect. You're just like, you know what? I need to clearly go look at this, and I hope you do. But you've decided to believe it all without researching it first, right? You're just like, you know what? This headline sounds good to me. This is great. You've got my attention. You've got my support. You've got my belief. But you haven't taken those next steps. Hopefully, Dan and I have maybe encouraged you to go, you know what? Maybe I need to look a little deeper. Because as you said, you need to have the answers to the questions that we're putting forward or the scenarios that we're dropping down here, right? We're hitting your thinker.
That's fair.
I hope. That's right. Hitting the thinker.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I mean, I myself love a good challenge. It's usually the other way around. I even said in a comment before, with a lot of stuff, I'm probably gonna, how did I say it? Well, it was in another live stream in the chat. I said normally you walk circles around people, so it's and I like a good challenge. So okay, so far, and well, I would have to look into the whole bear thing, and because these kids call them bald head or go up. Why don't you go up too? You know, I don't know what the implication of that is or what it means, what they said with that. You see that you get it. These little things do matter. So, but can I give you an answer on that? No. So I would have to look into that.
Let me ask you. I want to ask you a question then, Maykel. And we've been talking for a while, so you know, if you want to go and everything, that's fine. First of all, you're obviously deeply respectful and deeply thoughtful, and I appreciate your time and talking to us today.
Absolutely.
I want to know.
Not a problem.
You like challenges, so here's my challenge. What would it take for something in the Bible to not be true? Right? What conditions would have to be met for something in the Bible to not be true? If you don't have an answer for that for me today, that's fine. But that's like my parting question for you there.
I would extend on that just a little bit. Hold on. I want to put a sub challenge to that one. So what would it take for one thing in the Bible to not be true? I would then add to that, how many things in the Bible to not be true before we can discount the entire Bible?
Yeah.
Does it only take one thing? Does it take 10 things?
Yeah.
That's a good question. You would first have to reject the existence of God to actually make the claim or put the claim away by saying, okay, this is not the word of God, and then you might get into possible errors.
No.
Given my standpoint, given my standpoint, I would just say nothing. Nothing would convince me.
Oh,
I'm just going to be flat out honest. I'm very biased. I'm very biased.
If nothing could convince you, and if the Bible wasn't true, how could you know that?
Because I lived on the other side. I have been an atheist. I have seen the fruits, the work.
Well, hold on.
Thank you.
Before you do that, does personal experience validate the claims of the Bible? Right? Because the Bible has a lot of claims. Some of them moral, yes, but some of them about historical events, right? About what people have said or haven't said, right? Do those things correlate with your personal experience?
I don't really get the question, because I think I wasn't pointing at that. More like the opposite side, because you say like, okay, how do you like, what was the what question?
Well, so let me simplify this, right? So like I could read a book about George Washington, right? And you can ask me, why do I think this book about George Washington is true? And if I said, well, it's because of my personal experience, that doesn't really follow, right? Because the claims about George Washington, that really doesn't have anything to do with me or the things I've experienced or lived, right? Because there's things that are way outside of my context of living, right? So I would argue that the Bible is kind of in a similar place, right? Because it has claims, yes, some about God for sure, some about morality for sure, but it also has claims about other things, like you said, historical events or other things that people have said or things that have happened, right? So, those things, they don't necessarily correlate, right? Your personal experience and what the Bible has to say.
Well, it's kind of funny in a way, because the way I came into the faith was not because of Bible. It's the things that I researched, and I came to, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, it's written in the Bible also. It's like, hey, that's interesting, and then you start to research other stuff, and every time, every little data point, you came to the Bible, and it's like, okay, so I probably have to take this book a lot more seriously, because this is true, that is true, this is historically true. Like when you research like ancient civilizations and how the pagan systems were pretty much, they had all kinds of similarities all over the world, and then you read the story of the Tower of Babel, where the languages were scattered, and then you see like, hey, wait a minute, like, could this be true? I was open-minded, let's say it like that, eventually. Eventually,
I love the Tower of Babel story. It's a fascinating one.
You come across certain things like teachings of Jesus, and you're like, yeah, this is what I've been looking for my entire life. It's not like, oh, the Bible says so and it's true. No, there's got to be a little bit of life experience to go with it, because otherwise you just believe it for the sake of believing it, and I don't do that. I don't like that at all. I want to have some substance, to be able to say, yes, this is true because this and this and this is and this. You
gotcha.
You have to be able to. You have to be grounded in it, if you know what I mean.
So many other rabbit holes I'd love to go down, but
yeah.
I mean, Maykel, you've been a great caller, honestly, and you've been fairly honest, which is very, very rare, I find, on this kind of program. So I want to thank you for that, and I hope you'll call again sometime.
I would love to talk to you again, Maykel. I don't know what time it is in the Netherlands, but I appreciate you calling regardless.
Oh man,
absolutely.
It's
because
it is that I have a day off tomorrow, because it's 3:20 in the morning, so it's like 3:20 a.m.
It's absurd. It's absurd. You're spending your time talking to us. Well, that is something. Thank you for that. Listen, again,
I got challenged in the chat by other people. I don't know if they're still around, but
you followed through with that. Shout outs to you. That's why we give you our full respects, Maykel. Listen, we can keep talking forever, but we want to let you go because we've been talking for a little bit here. But I do sincerely would love to chat with you again if you have another day off or something, if you can make it. If not, I totally understand. I hope this conversation was fruitful for you. We'll go ahead and let you go for now, but thank you again for calling. And
keep researching, keep looking into it, and don't stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I never will. I never will. I'm a truth seeker, so why should I stop? Well, yeah.
Stu, hence the title of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Maykel, thanks so much. I'm going to let you go now. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your day, night. I don't know, 3:20 in the morning. It's kind of hard to say. But wow, what a call, Justin. What a call. We talked to that call for a long time.
Hey man, that's awesome. I mean, it's easy to get lost in a phone call like that and go for a long time when the ideas are flowing back and forth. And I feel like he was genuinely picking up what we were putting down. You know what I mean? Some people, they just want to argue and preach and read their scriptures and stuff. I think Maykel might be putting a little bit of cart before the horse in some aspects, but it sounds like your chat went, dude, if you've got ideas, you need to call in. And he went, okay, he called in. I hope the experience was a positive one. I hope he'll call again.
Yes.
And I enjoyed the call very much.
And I don't let calls go on for that long, but that was such a good conversation. I didn't want it to end.
Yeah, I almost wanted to jump on that, like the Tower of Babel and stuff. And I was like, you know what? There might be other people on the line who want to get through that I don't know.
Yeah, we do have, and I want to get to like at least one other caller here because like we spent so much time with Maykel, but you know what? I mean, he was calling from the Netherlands and stuff. Who knows when he'll call again? I think it was worth it. Genuinely, I haven't had a Christian argue for his position. I can't remember the last time a Christian argued for his position as well as he did. Now, obviously, for some parts, I think for the Jesus morality part, I was actually pretty impressed. I think he gave pretty good responses by Christian standards, and it sounds like a put down. I'm not trying to make it as a put down, but I'm saying it was more thoughtful and more qualitative than what I'm used to. So that was great. I appreciated that. Obviously, we disagree, but
it was a theist caller who actually used the words "I don't know."
Yes, and that too. That's so important. So important.
Because a lot of times when I'm watching, Truth Wanted or other programs on the ACA, you don't get that. You get callers that call in and like they think they know everything. They're ready to make all the excuses under the planet or under the umbrella. And at no point are they going to be like, you know what? You've just said a thing that has the only answer I can give you is I don't know, and I have to go look at it. And that's how you can judge an honest conversation from someone who just wants to hear the sound of their own voice.
I agree. That was great. Let's try to fit one more call. I think. Can we do one more here, Justin?
I got so much room for so many calls, Dan.
I think Crew's okay with that. I think we'll try to get one more, and then because we'll just try to shift things around.
This show is not done by just Dan, right? Like there's an army behind Dan running all these things. So yeah, we got to definitely watch that clock.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we should take a moment to thank the wonderful, amazing crew that helped make this show happen. Maybe we can get the crew cam up here and show all the folks that help make things happen. Look at this awesome, awesome crew. Thanks so much, crew, for putting up with me and, making the show happen. So let's try to get, again,
this is easily the best call-in show I've been on today.
Hell yeah. That's great. That's great.
It's
maybe
the only
all week.
one I've been on today, but
how about your week? Can we do week?
It's the best call-in show I've been on all week.
There we go. I like that. All right, we're going to take John from Canada real quick. John from Canada, we're at the tail end of the show, okay? So I can't give you all the time in the world, but I want to do at least one more person. So I'm picking you today, John. What do you got for us?
Okay, I'll cut straight to the case. Can we agree that Jesus was a socialist?
Can we agree that Jesus was a socialist? Socialism was not a thing when Jesus was around. So
I think a better question would be, would Jesus be a socialist?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
would Jesus be a socialist?
I think he would agree with a lot of progressive ideas, but I don't think Jesus was interested in like class consciousness in the same way that other. John, is that you? You got like a beeping going on your line. John, you there?
Did he mute us? Did something happen? We had to mute?
I don't know. I'm going to return him to the queue so that our call screeners can maybe help suss out what's going on there. Okay, right off the bat, is Jesus a socialist? I know we argue that, like, and say, oh yeah, haha, he's a socialist. But if I'm asked point blank, I'm kind of now realizing, yeah, actually, I don't think I can say that, because socialism was developed at a very particular time and place. Again, it looks at history to develop its position, but I don't know if Jesus would care about those kinds of things. I think he's more interested in the kingdom.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance there. Like, if we take the hard black and white rule of what a socialist would Jesus be that? No. I don't think he would be a pure hardline socialist. But if we take some of his individual actions, such as, again, we come right back to what we've been talking about since the top of the program, his ability to feed the masses or turn water into wine. If a socialist had those abilities, that's what they would do every weekend. Like, that would be their weekend is filled up with, sorry guys, I can't hang with you. I got to go over here and produce bread out of nothing. Yeah.
If anything, Jesus is, a Christian nationalist, right? Like, he's all about giving glory to God, aka him. So I don't think he really cares about.
Yeah, he wouldn't have given bread to someone who didn't believe in him.
Yeah, I don't think he does in the Gospels, right?
Or he would use that power as a way to persuade, right?
Yeah, he does make a big point about, you have to believe in me in order to like receive what's going on here. Like, all the miracles seem to be, oh well, I did this because this person asked me, right? And did it of me. So there is some. So there's
that
a bit of
be a socialist at all.
Yeah, that's sort of a theocratic, sort of fascist almost, sort of like he's the leader, right? There's no democracy in that. He doesn't care what other people think. So,
where a socialist would want to raise up, like, would look behind them and try to lift up the people who are worse off than themselves, to try to get everybody up to the highest point they could possibly be. Where Jesus would always be like, I'm always going to be above you. But if you believe in me, I'll turn your water to wine.
Now, he does raise the material conditions of all those involved in the afterlife, right? Because, streets of gold and crowns and stuff. So there is a case to be made there. I don't know. This is a very funny analysis.
He would still be living in the bigger house with the bigger street of gold.
Right. But then there is sort of a class system still, because there's everybody in hell as well, maybe, for burning. I don't know.
They're probably the ones that produce the gold bricks for the roads.
Right, the roads that were paved with good intentions. Yeah. I think. Anyway, so I haven't seen John call back. So I think we're gonna have to sort of get things going from there, because we're kind of at the end of the show. So I want to thank you again, Justin, for being on today's episode of Truth Wanted. I loved today's episode. Thanks so much for joining me.
As soon as we're done here, I'm gonna go talk to all my friends and totally fangirl about how I did a show with Objectively Dan. You know, like I've been watching you for years. This is a milestone in my YouTube journey and my call-in show journey. And you know, this is just one more step, and I hope we can go forward with it.
Listen to this guy glad handing over here. Well, I appreciate it, Justin. Thanks so much for being on. Would love to have you on again sometime. If people want to watch more of your stuff, where should they go?
They should go to This Just In. I'm sure if you just search it on the YouTubes, you'll find a lot of different This Just In channels. It's not a very unique name by any means, but you know, you can find this logo that I got here behind me that you guys have seen a couple times there, and you'll recognize me. So go to This Just In, check it out. I've got another video. There's the logo there. There we go. I've got another video coming out later this month where I do another episode of Reading from Right to Left with a whole new panel of people reading another children's book with some just weird ideas inside that book.
Awesome. Yes. Thanks for those plugs. And I also want to give a thank you to Kelly, who's been our backup host today. So, hey, there he is. Kelly.
Hey, how's it going? Great show, man. That was an awesome call with Maykel. That was great. I really enjoyed listening to that. And Justin, you said something, and you said it so calmly. It was awesome when you said, I just want to finish this sentence. That was great. That just hit me the right way when you said that. That was great.
That's probably the calmest anyone has ever said that
word phrasing. It was great.
Like on this show.
It might have been the Canadian in me. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
It was something I'm going to try to emulate in the future. That's for sure.
Oh, well, I appreciate it, both of you, so much. And now I've done a show with both of you, and I hope to do some more.
Absolutely.
I got to say, Justin, I know how you feel about doing your first show with Dan. I felt the same way too. You
guys need to shut up. I'm going to cut
seriously,
all of this
it was
out.
like 4 years ago, and I was like, because Dan, I've been watching you ever since you were on Anthony Magnabosco's show, right? And when I got to be on this show the first time as a guest, I was like in heaven, man. It was awesome. So.
I'm going to mute both of you, okay? If you guys keep this up, I'm not letting either of you back, okay? None of this. I'm not going to respond other than thank you.
Dan,
that's very nice. Thank you for saying
We're
that.
just trying to say that you're great. And then you got to take it from our point of view, right? A couple of years ago, you were just a voice in my ear while I was outside doing yard work, and I'm just listening and to the points that you say, and I'm nodding, and I'm like, you know what, this guy knows what he's talking about. Wow. And the reason I'm even on this stage here now with you guys is because I take the points and arguments that I've learned from you and all of the other members of the ACA, and I'm now here beside you, going through the journey too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, for real, sincerely, thank you. That's very, very kind. On a less serious note, I'm going to go.
Thanks for letting me finish the sentence, by the way.
Okay, well, I need Kelly to read the prompt this week so that we can move on from me receiving compliments from both of you, because this is just too much at this point.
Our question of the week for next week is, if you could rewrite the Bible, what would it say? And I think we're looking for like the general message of the Bible. Maybe not. You can,
specifics. I'm open for either.
Too, so
yeah,
an open-ended topic like that for someone to interpret and give an answer works.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it sounds good to me too.
And just one thing real quick about that fig tree. Jesus did have the whole day to come up with that story with the allegory of the fig tree being the state of Israel, right? He had the whole day to figure that story out. Just want to point that out.
Well, yeah, that is true. That I guess he did have some time with that, and really all of eternity as well. If you think about it, like from the very beginning. We got some super chats at the end here. Thank you, Crispin Slit, for the £1. And I think, Justin, did you just donate? What the heck?
So, with like a couple hours before the show was starting, there was a bunch of people in the chat, and one guy was like, I got the number 1 spot crown. Another guy, I got the number 2 spot. And I'm just like, well, I know how to steal a number 1 spot. Throw some money in there.
There you go.
So yes, I threw a $3 sticker in there to get the number 1 spot and of course to support the channel.
Well, thank you. It's not often I get to say thank you to super chats to the person who I'm talking to on the air.
I don't
but
think that ever
appreciate
happened to me.
Yeah, that's true. It does happen with Kelly. But listen, sincerely, thank you guys both. Justin, thanks for being on, and of course,
Pleasure.
Kelly.
Thank you so much.
I always enjoy talking with you, man. Let's wrap this baby up, huh? Let's get this done for tonight, folks. This has been another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I've been your host today, Objectively Dan. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good night. Bye.
Watch the non-profits and join the hosts in the live chat. Visit tiny.cc/ytnp.